outside, and it's feeling a lot like fall, even though it's late July. So I've decided I'm going to have a little campfire tonight at the tiny cabin, and I'm inviting all of you as well to come along for a relaxing little campfire. When I make a campfire, I usually start with 2 large boards, or in my case, these are old pine boards from my workshop. But if I'm out in the wilderness, I'll just use 2 large logs. And I always start by putting them on the end of each part of the little thing that I'm burning in, whether it be a rock pile campfire type setup or one of these little contraptions. Now this one here that I have is very old and rusty, and after I've got the 2 large boards on each side, I always use some kind of paper, and I've already got some little thin pieces as well, and then add a couple large pieces, and then I'm just going to light a match and start my fire. Now, it's been a few months, but one of my wonderful subscribers gave me the idea of a campfire video. So, I want to thank that person. I can't remember who it was, and I can't remember if it was more than one person, but thank you for the idea. So I decided to have a little campfire. Now, I originally didn't like the location that I chose because it was a little too noisy. Our air conditioner kept kicking on and off, and I didn't want to ruin the atmosphere with that loud air conditioning sound. So I came up with a contraption that I could move a burning fire with, and I've never done that before. Sometimes if you kick stuff, oh, I think our grass is catching on fire. Yeah, the grass is definitely catching on fire. You see, the fire started making a hissing sound, but I wanted to prevent that because it was ruining the vibe of the video. But I don't want our grass to catch on fire. I think it was that piece of wood that was causing it, though. It's a really good night for a fire. It just has a fall type feeling, and it really got me in the mood for a camping trip. But I can't go camping right now, so I thought I could at least have a little campfire. Well, guys, I'm gonna head back inside, and I'm gonna tell some stories of some camping trips that I went on when I was a kid. was also thinking of some other, I guess they're auction centers, and also some different antique stores that are around the area that I think would be really good. That would be fun to look at. I really like the one that I was at the other day because it's right by this little peaceful creek. But the weeds were so tall I couldn't get down to the creek. I was going to show that in the video. With the lighting that I've got on in here, and the darkness, and the fact that I was thinking about having a campfire, it's brought back a lot of memories of my dad and going camping with him. I even have a checkered tablecloth down on our table out here, and that's giving me some camping memories as well. We used to go camping the same place every year. A lot of times it would be the week of Thanksgiving. A couple times it was close to Christmas, and we got snow. And we would go just in tents. Sometimes we would rent a camper, or if another relative had a camper, just going to run and jump. So I ran and I jumped across the creek. But what I didn't realize was the reason why he wanted me to go the other direction and to get across this little area of like rocks. The spot that I jumped was very, very soft from the rain, and it had mud that was like quicksand. And I jumped and cleared the creek just fine, but I landed right in that soft mud. And I instantly went all the way down to my knees in this really super soft mud. Luckily, he did help me out of that little predicament, and I got out of there and was able to get back to the campground. But I had mud completely caked on my shoes, my jeans. But looking back now, that particular time, it was kind of a bad day. But it's fun to look back on now and have those memories. A previous trip, it was probably a year before that happened, we were at this other spot where my grandfather and all of his sons